Jamuna Tiravanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. That's as long as my voice is going to last. So, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa. What is it? Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribhajakacharya Sri Shaman's Divine Grace. Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON BBT founder Charya Jagaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namchar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mathura Dham Ki. Dwarka Dham Ki. Navadi Dham Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Tulsi Maharani Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Sambhita Bhakti Vrinda Ki. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki. Shri Shri Gauranatai Ki. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman. Lord Nrsingadev Ki. Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. So I thought just to finish up on the reports from Mayapur, from the GBC meeting. I collected some little samplings from some of the presentations in some of the classes. And I think that you'll find them interesting. By the way, if you give a donation, of course, charity begins at home. So you want to help build the temple here in Tucson. But because we were talking about the temple, the Vedic planetarium, anyone who gives $1,000 or more gets their name put in a silver box, a beautiful box. Your name is in there. And that is kept at the feet of Lord Nrsingadev perpetually, perennially, eternally, to give you shelter. So that's something nice to think about. The devotee who makes up, there's a devotee named Kalakanta. It's not Prabhupada's Kalakanta, he's another Kalakanta. And he's the minister of the cow protection. So he's a nice devotee, and he's a farmer, which kind of helps if you're in charge of the agriculture and cow protection. And he, did you know that each cow has a unique, like we have a unique fingerprints? Every cow has a unique nose print. And he is systematically arranging, he's about, I think about a third through, registering all ISKCON cows by their nose print. Because it's important. Here's an example. There was a farm that they found that, where was it? Somewhere in South India. It had 150 cows, and 120 of them were milking, and there were only 10 bulls. Now, what does that mean? Anyone know what that means? Yeah, what happened? It means what happened, because usually you got, one boy, one girl. So it should be 50-50 or at least close to it. So no, they were selling the bulls. Because bulls, if you don't have enough work for them. So imagine that. So ever since then, that was about 5-6 years ago. So eventually it'll get to the point that every ISKCON cow, we got their nose print. So we make sure that he's really into it. It's an example of the kind of devotees that are doing service, It's very nice. There's also, here's something far out I heard in one of the classes, that Rupa Goswami wrote the Vidagdha Madhava. And in that Vidagdha Madhava is a lot of, the flavor is the mood of separation. And Raghunath Das Goswami was editing it. Like Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he helped edit the Sat Sandarbhas and the Hari Bhakti Vilas of Rupa Goswami. And, of course, Sat Sandarbhas by Jiva Goswami. But the point is they would edit each other's books. Tamal Krishnamars told me this. And you can see it. When you go to the Radha Damodar temple, go over there, can you get a little cup of water? When you go to the Radha Damodar temple, which Prabhupada is Jiva Goswami's Radha Damodar, Prabhupada said it's the center of the spiritual universe, where Prabhupada stayed for some years before he came to the West. But there's the room that overlooks Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kotir and Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. And Prabhupada also used it sometimes as his kitchen. Then there's that other room, that longer, thin room, where Prabhupada used to sleep and meet guests and things like that. If you look, there's a beam about half this width that runs up, like this, up the wall, over and down. It's a support beam. You can see it. And when you look at, when Prabhupada gave the devotees, I think it was 72, gave them a tour of Vrindavan, he gave them a tour, thanks a lot, that's a big cup, of the Radha Damodar temple. Thanks. And he pointed out, and Tamal Krishnamars told me this, that there's a panel. There's about this big, and obviously you can push it up and there's something up there. There's a little cubby hole or stash area. So Tamal asked, what is this? Prabhupada said the Goswamis used to hide things here. So Tamal said, what did they hide? Prabhupada said, oh, probably prasadam. Actually, Prabhupada said later on, he said they used to keep their pens and writing papers and things up there because they would exchange manuscripts. They would edit for each other. And there's a far out story about Rupa Goswami that Sanatan Goswami wrote a verse and he described Radharani's hair, her braid, like a long, shiny black snake curving down her back. And Rupa Goswami said, this is not such a good analogy. She's gentle, sweet, she snake going up her back. No, take it out. So he took it out. Then, no, it was Sanatan took it out. And Rupa had written it, and Sanatan took it out. So Sanatan Goswami was sitting in his Bhajan Kutir, and over there on Manasagangi, where there's that, and he goes right down to the lake. And all of a sudden, he was sitting there in this morning sun, chanting his japa, and he saw some young girls laughing, joking, coming on the other side of the kunda, take their dip. And he noticed that they were never seen them before. And that, and the one at the center was especially beautiful, and the attention of all the other young coward girls. So they took their dip and left. And as they were getting out of the water, he saw that climbing up her back of the center was a big black snake. And he yelled, "Snake, snake, look out." And she looked over her shoulder, laughed, and they all disappeared. So he went back to Rupa Goswami, said, "Put it back in. She likes it. She wants that analogy." So that gives you a flavor of Govardhan Hill and the Goswamis in those days in Vrindavan. So now I want to make sure I've got it right. Yes. So Rupa Goswami and his Vidagdha Madhava, which one of the main themes is separation. And Raghunath Das Goswami, living there at Radhakund, was editing it for him. But as he was editing it, the Vidagdha Madhava, he was feeling it. And he was becoming so overwhelmed by separation. He was crying, he wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping. And the locals were worried he was going to leave his body. He was getting so weak and distraught. He went on for, he was doing his editing work, but as he was working through the book, he was becoming completely distraught, almost at the point of leaving his body in separation. So the inhabitants, his associates there at Radhakund, went to Rupa Goswami and said, "You got to have him stop it. He's going to leave his body. Somebody else has got to edit it. What to do?" So Rupa Goswami wrote a one-act play. It's called the Danakeli Kamuda. And it's all about joking pastimes. When they cause, Radha, the gopis get trapped by Krishna, and they barter back and forth how to get Krishna to clear the path and what's the toll on their, the cost, their fee on their tax on their, all their dairy goods. And if you read it, it's all jokes. It's all joking and sporting with each other. So he wrote that quickly, and it was a one-act play, and gave it to and said, "Oh no, forget editing that, edit this." And it cured him. It saved his life, of Raghunath Das Goswami. So it gives you a little flavor of the mood of Vrindavan. One day, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj gave class, and he was talking about, it was on Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day. So, he wrote that 3-volume biography, and not everything's in that. So he told one pastime. There was a big scholar at Calcutta University, which even today is one of the best Sanskrit schools in the world. Even University of Chicago sends their students in Sanskrit there. So there was a big professor there, and he was bragging. He happened to he was speaking, and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was speaking afterwards. And he was bragging that he had actually trained Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He said, "I trained him, I taught him, Sanskrit, this and that, So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he spoke, he said, "You've never seen Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. You've never seen him. You didn't teach him a thing." So he said, No, he was in my class and at this time and this place and for these. No, you're a liar. You've never seen him. Oh, how was that? And he went on to explain that Vaishnavas are completely transcendental and materialists cannot see them, cannot know them, cannot understand them. He said, you think you saw Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but you've never seen him. The man was very upset about that. And he challenged Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to a debate. Now, you know, debates were a big deal in those days. Now everybody just sees what's on cable, you know, and stays in their own little pigeonhole house, you know, in isolation. But in those days, it was a big deal. So all the intelligentsia and glitterati of Calcutta was the second city of the British Empire. It was a big deal. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur began to debate this man and hit him so hard. You know, he's known as Nrsinga Guru. The Mayavadis used to cross the street to avoid him. Prabhupada tells the story. And he would cross the street and grab them. Why are you cheating the people, teaching impersonalism? So he hit this man in a public debate, and the man was losing so badly. It's a little scatological. He lost control of his bowels. He was like, if you get the air knocked out of you, you know how hard you have to hit somebody intellectually? So that just gives you a flavor of our acharyas, you know, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So during the Indian independence, the struggle for independence, who was the real hero of Indian independence, that's another story, was not Gandhi. The British were laughing at Gandhi. I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody. Prabhupada said among politicians, he was a saint. Among saints, he was a politician. So the British were just toying with him. And they would just lock him up and let him out, lock him up and let him out. And, you know, people would get all agitated and they'd lock him up and then they'd let him out after a while. And, you know, it's a whole thing. They just played him like a yo-yo. And it was recently released in the British archives, the military archives, so many years later, you know, 50 years, 75 years, whatever it is. They have different spans. And it's all coming out in the British. What really, anyway, I don't want to get too far afield, but what really shook him up was Subhash Chandra Bose. Because Subhash Chandra Bose was getting the Indian officers, the British. I mean, they were at the apex of the British Raj. There were only 6,000 Brits in India. And the population of India at that time was, I don't know how many, a couple 100 million. So, you know, they were really controlled by the Indian civil service and the Indian military. The Indian military supported the British Army. As soon as they lost India, they lost their whole empire. Prabhupada said, due to offenses to the deities. Prabhupada said, the British lion is now badly bandaged. They're on that little freezing island. So, but the Subhash Chandra Bose, the real hero of Indian independence, because he convinced the officers to desert. When they lost the army, they said, there's no way we can control this place. You just help us get through World War II. Help us get through World War II, and we'll give you independence. But it's Subhash Chandra Bose who actually is the hero. As Prabhupada said 50 years ago and was completely correct. Now it's coming out in the British archives. But the point is that he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Subhash Chandra Bose, and he challenged Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that you're taking all these young men, they're just ringing bells and eating rice, and they could be helping us. They could, they're intelligent. They could be, we want Siraj, we want independence. So, what are you up to? And his response was, what's I looking for? He said, you're teaching them a slave mentality. This surrender to Krishna, that I'm meek and fall, lower than a straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree. And we want strong men to push the British out. So you're teaching a slave mentality. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur responded by saying, you, sir, are teaching a slave mentality. People are slave of their senses, slave of their tongue, slave of false ego. Actually, we are teaching the only independence. And what has your independence done anyway? And if you think about it, because this is the mood, dogs run free, so why can't we? You get enough money and you're free. But this whole mood of independence, what has it done for people? Do we see a noble society? When you look out there, do you see character? Do you see value? Are people happy by freedom? We don't find that. We find that people are completely... Radhanath Maharaj was speaking. I've got pictures of it. He spoke at the Bank of England. It was the director. The Bank of England's all over the world, and this is in London, and he was invited to speak in the bank to the directors of the Bank of England. And they're in the building was built 300 years ago, and it's all oak paneled and the whole thing. And he's speaking there. And Radhanath Maharaj started off by saying, I'm speaking to you, the directors of the Bank of England. I don't even have a bank account. He said, actually, I don't even have any pockets. Because he just was shot or in a t-shirt and a dhoti, I don't have any pockets. He said, but let me point something out to you. Now, talk about truth to power. And this whole idea of independence, and we just build up the nation, and you're all slave mentality. You're just depending on Krishna and ringing bells and eating rice and wasting your life. What are you doing for society? So, of course, we're going to go on Monday to Food for Life, but that's another story. But so in that mood, Radhanath Maharaj pointed out, he said, how do you measure the materialists? How do they measure a successful nation? The way you measure a successful nation is called GDP, which it means gross domestic products. And they're the durable goods. Things that last long, 3 years or more. Washing machines, cars, airports, things like that. How much stuff does your nation produce? When Prabhupada first came to America, Prabhupada said, they're sending up Sputnik, and you are making bicycles and sewing machines. India will never be. But anyway, so the Radhanath Maharaj said, that's how you're measuring a successful nation. And they have the meeting. It's a big thing. They meet in Davos in Switzerland. It's the G9, the top domestic nations meet. And you've got Japan and whatever it is, Germany and America, China, the top G9. Now, here's an interesting thing. And they're measured by that. They've got the largest gross domestic product for their nations. GDP. But the thing is, Radhanath Maharaj had one of his disciples do the research. And if you look at it, it overlaps. The top 9 materially developed nations also have the highest divorce rate, the highest suicide rate, the highest incarceration rate, the highest murder rate. How do you measure a society under stress? Well, you've got divorce, you've got child abuse, you've got drug addiction, you've got suicide, that's how you measure. And lo and behold, the top 9 nations also have the top 9 symptoms of a society's in distress. So Radhanath Maharaj said, instead of whipping people to chase after making cars and televisions and airplanes, you need to measure GHP. What is the gross happiness production? That's how you measure a successful nation. And they stood up and gave him a standing ovation. So, this whole idea, where are people being pushed? What are their values? They measure people. Do you know that some of the top psychologists in the world study piped in music? Music? You know why? Because they want to squeeze out. Prabhupada talks about, squeezing out the life. Factory is a name for hell only. They paste that music. When you go in, you're first jacked up by coffee, and then you kind of hit the slump and about 10 o'clock, and they jack up the music so you get all pepped up, and then you go to lunch and come back and you start to digest lunch about 2 o'clock, you slow down, they change the music. Hair dryers, a blow dryer, they call it a blow dryer. Yeah. They used to sell those only to women. And men thought, this is a woman's thing, I'm not going to be a little light in my loafers, or I'm not going to be a fruitcake, or I don't know what the right word is to say nowadays, but I'm not going to lean that way. I'm a man. I'm John Wayne. So, but the market, what do you think it's called? Design engineering. So but you're losing half the population. You got only women buying your product. Well, how do you crack open the men? But the men have a false ego. I'm not going to use a woman's thing. And they all came out in pink and not doing it. So what did they do? They put a handle on it like power tools, like a power drill and a power saw. And they came out in black and red. Boom, sales took off amongst men. The point I'm making is that some of the best and brightest in the world, we are consumer units. My father, who was a good man and helped the devotees, when he retired before China opened up. And one day I've stopped by to visit him. I was driving from LA to San Diego, and they lived along the way. So I stopped by, and he's reading Wall Street Journal. He said, damn. He said, I retired too soon. China's opening up. He said, think of it. 1 billion consumer units. That's how he was looking at it. Now we're thinking, wow, China's opening up. That's a whole story. Tamal Krishna Maharaj and just they went into China. In those days, you could not get into China. If you went to China, you had to go as a tourist, and you had a government minder with you, and you saw the Great Wall of China, you saw Tiananmen Square, and that was it. You were in a forbidden city, and you're in and you're out. So how do you mix with the devotees? With the people? How do you do it? The way they got in, if you go in under a business visa, then you can roam around because you're going to different factories and you're generating business for developing China. So if you're a business visa, but you had to go in and do business. So how did the devotees get into China? Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me this. Dristadumna, who was his brahmacharya assistant, he might have taken sannyas by then. His father was the international chair for Seagram's liquor. They went in as salesmen. They got a business visa from Dristadumna's father for selling Seagram's whiskey. Tamal said, well, the holy name, divine intoxication, it's a little bit of a rationale. And that's how they travel all over China. And it was so tough. People couldn't even present, Hari Lama. Is that, Hari Krishna, Hari Lama? It was tough. And Tamal was thinking about giving up. He told me this. We were driving one time. He's in Hong Kong. There's a top student from Beijing University. Somehow or other, he got one of Prabhupada's books on his own, became a devotee. All he had was Prabhupada's Gita. Came to Hong Kong, found out the temple, met Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and wanted to become initiated. So just try to understand. Tamal, how do you penetrate this place? How do we reach them? It was so hard. This young man comes, top student, Beijing University, never met devotees, but he had Prabhupada's Gita. And he was chanting 16 rounds, following the regular principles. In Chinese, they have some names that in English, like Bin Too Fat or Who Flung Dung, or, like our names sound funny to them. This young man's name, because Tamal was thinking, will they ever take Krishna consciousness? Walks in the door, Bhagavad Gita, 16 rounds, following the regular principles, and his name was Yu Chan Ting. Tamal said, all right. Like Krishna just sent him a sign. You chanting. Okay, just give him the holy name somehow or other, and it'll all work out. And now we have many temples in China. We have to be careful. But we've got installed Gaura-Nitai deities. We've got, there's a lot going on. So another sample of around the world. But the point is that people are just squeezed so hard. We don't know what it's like. We're not young people trying to go out there and get a job. But it is one of the toughest. This is the first generation that will have a lower standard of life than their parents. The American dream? The American dream is that we're progressing. One man kept saying to Prabhupada, I was sitting in the room, we're making progress, Prabhupada said, your progress is like a moth into the flames. You're moving forward, but in what direction? So people are being squeezed so hard. And the American dream, Devamrita Maharaj says, you know why it's called the American dream? You have to be asleep to believe it. Which I said, way to go, Devamrita Maharaj. It's true. So my point is, they measure what makes people happy. Now, what else did I write? Because I won't end on time today, but I guess we'll say it this way. So they measure what makes people happy. Like they measure the music, how to squeeze it out of you, how the hand. They're thinking about they study these things. And they've found that, lo and behold, and we're not talking about devotees, we're just talking about the ordinary man on the street or lady on the street. What makes people, after a certain base level, you got to be able to pay your mortgage off. You got to have some basic health care so your teeth don't fall out of your head. You got to have some bottom line. You might have a little savings for your kids so you can send them to college. So, but after there's a diminishing point of return. They can give you the key to the executive bathroom. They can give you the executive suite. They can give you bonus stock. But after a while, it decreases and it doesn't really have as much effect. You know what actually makes people happy? Feeling that their life means something. Feeling that they're doing something that lasts in this world. Feeling that they're making a difference. That they're making the world a better place. That's what actually makes people happy. I was on book distribution in Detroit some years ago. And I asked this guy, we were talking. I said, what do you do? He said, I work at the River Rouge stamping factory. It's an auto parts. I said, what do you do? He said, I don't really know. He said, I put the sheet of metal and I pull the lever, wham, and it comes out, it's all bent to hell. He makes bumpers or something. I mean, who knows what the guy does? Car doors. You do that, bam, whoosh, bam, whoosh, bam. What does that do to your brain? So because the point was that surrendering to Krishna is slave mentality. And we don't have a big red fancy car. So what is the value of our life? But when you actually understand what's going on, how we are at the devotees, you are actually giving people shelter, giving people relief, giving them value. We actually make people happy. There was a lady, I'll say it this way. I'm the GBC for Los Angeles, so I visit LA regularly. And I like to check with the mail order and because the Western headquarters and all the English books, English language books distributed in Canada and America, they have the local temple list, a summary list, but they've also got the BBT, and they get far out letters to the BBT. I'll give you an example. And they get awash with letters. I'm trying to think of which story to tell. Okay, so one of the letters, they opened it up, and inside was a check for $500. And it was a mother. And the mother said, I would give more because what you did for our family was priceless. She said, my son was the jewel of the family, the top student. He was on his way to University of Chicago, one of the best schools in America. He had a scholarship from basketball. He was handsome. He was healthy. Just, all the, like on the slot machine, all the cherries lined up in life. But one day, little cough, goes in. Turns out he's got a virulent type of cancer with leukemia on top of it. And he's got maybe at most 6 months to live. The whole family was crushed. You can imagine the jewel of the family, and all of a sudden he's, withering away. The boy was so despondent. Everybody was. And he used to fly with his mother or his father to the Mayo Clinic from Chicago, from somewhere in Indiana. He'd go to the Chicago airport on his way to the Mayo Clinic, which is up in Wisconsin, I think, Minnesota. So, which is a famous cancer clinic. One day after one of those trips, The boy just changed. He wasn't despondent. He wasn't suicidal. He wasn't furious at the world. And he started to give solace to his parents. I've had a good life, and after all, the soul's eternal. And this has been very purifying experience for me. And he couldn't believe it. And after he passed away, he only lasted about 4 months. His mother was, after some time cleaning his room, she found a copy of Prabhupada's Gita. And it was all marked up. All kinds of notes fell out of it. And he'd gotten Prabhupada's Gita from a devotee. And it changed his life. He became the solace of the entire family. We had a guy, when I was a president of the temple in Michigan, in Ann Arbor. And I know this is completely politically incorrect, but you could tell it the other way around, with the women to a man or a man to a woman. I was sorting the mail. He arrived ready-made. He had Prabhupada's Gita. And we were Ann Arbor. And he was living in Indiana. He said, now, I want to move into the temple. I want to be a monk. I want to surrender my life. I want to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. If you won't take me, then I'm going to go to Detroit. You don't take me to Detroit, I'm going to Chicago. He had it all mapped out. He was here, figured he was going to go through every temple till one of them finally took him. We said, no, come on in. You're more than welcome. Turns out, I was sorting the mail one day, and the mail said, he got a letter. His name was Eric. I don't want to say his letter. He said, anyway, you'll see. So his name was Eric. So one day it came and it was addressed to Erica. So I said, hey, it's just a river of names, Eric, Erica, this body, that. I was just joking with him. He said, you got a minute? Now, as a temple president in Sandamani, if somebody said, you got a minute? Okay, block out an hour and take a seat. So the guy he said, actually, I wanted to become a woman. I felt like I was a woman trapped in a male's body all my life. And I wanted to change. And he contacted and been approved by the psychiatrist at Cleveland Medical School. They used to do that. That was in the first place. To do a sex change. And you have to live as a woman for a year. You have to do all kinds of psychological tests, because you can't change your mind. So he had to dress as a woman for a year. Makeup, took the hormones, his whole anatomically he changed, so many things. His father was the athletic director for the University of Indiana. His father was a big jock. And here his only boy was turning into a girl. Skirt, long hair, mascara, the whole thing. Couldn't believe it. Fast forward, Eric moves into the temple. His father came to see him. You have to understand, this is the mid-70s. People now, they know we're monks. They're happy to see us. They like it, But in those days, they saw somebody shaved head and a dhoti they were wondering, where did the mothership land? They were, are we from outer space? They're trying to figure out took a wrong turn in Thailand. We're lost Buddhists. Well, what's going on here? Tim Leary, do a LSD flashback. They couldn't figure out what was going on. So the father, last time he'd seen his son, athletic director, big jock, rings our doorbell, comes in, says, is Erica here? I said, we call him Eric. Father was visibly relieved. He sat down on his, we had a little, I'll go get him. He's up in the ashram. I'll go get him. He comes down, dhoti, kurta, tilak, sika, Father doesn't say a word. He gets up, walks all the way around, checks everything out, checks out the Sikh at the tilak. Last time he'd seen his son, he was dressed as a woman. He said, different, but a damn lot better than last time. And he actually said, saved him. You know, I mean, whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, that's not the issue. The issue was Krishna he concluded by reading Bhagavad Gita. Krishna put him in a particular body. He must have a particular dharma and a karmic path. And all this business is some scrambled up from a previous life. Who knows what happened, you know? So Krishna put him in a man's body, do the dharma of a man. He's married. He's got 2 kids, grown up adult, and he's a devotee in Michigan. Happy guy. I mean, it could have gone the other way. So don't, send me the emails about, we're biased for gender. I'm just saying that how devotees have reading Prabhupada's books saves people's lives. And it happens all the time. And they get them regularly. People, and they, instead of slaving away, I mean, people can't get married. They're putting off marriage. They're putting off having kids. Can't buy a house. People living with their parents because they can't pay the mortgage on a house. This is not how, we're not meant to live like gerbils, like little hamsters on a wheel. It's not a human form of life. And we're meant to give and do for others and actually help people. And that gives the greatest satisfaction. If we can help people, it's not how can you exploit and stack up stuff. There's a bumper sticker you see in San Diego, in California. The one who dies with the most toys wins. The one who dies with the most toys wins. No, the one who dies with the most toys dies. And the toys go to the dimwit relatives who inherit them. So we actually have a wonderful life. And we get to give the greatest gift to others. And the Prabhupada told me personally in a letter, there are Brahmins on every corner. Just go and pick them out. Pick them up. They're out there. And Vaisheshika Prabhu is going to send me the quote. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, and sometimes we do door-to-door, Sankirtan, house to house. Then you knock on the door and they open it. First off, they've got to slide all the chains off it, take all the locks off it. Then you open the door and that nasty smell comes out. Roast beef and cigarettes and dogs have passed stool in their shoes. I mean, you think, oh man, and the person stumbles to the door. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes that even though they're in that condition, in the core of their heart, they're looking out the window, they're looking down the street, and they're wondering, when will Lord Chaitanya's devotees come and save me? That's from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we should know, and this is the conclusion, we should remember, because familiarity breeds contempt, and but we should remember what we're doing. We should remember the effect it has. We should remember that devotees all over the world are doing wonderful things, and we get to make people happy. We become happy, and we become happy. And at the end of this life, back home, back to Godhead. Sign me up. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. And I think we're not too late. Oh, wait. I forgot the best story. I'll be quick. Ramaswamy, one of the committee, we have the BBT GBC Relations Committee. It's a GBC committee and the BBT trustees. And we work on planning out the books and what we need and Sankirtan and what, all that kind of stuff. Vaisheshika makes a presentation. It's fantastic. Ramaswar told a story because my point is that we are in a mystical movement. Chaitanya, Krishna is pushing behind this. This is the, what is it? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Even the Christians have it in their Mahavakyam. This is Krishna's Sankirtan movement, and it will be successful. I mean, you got a big project over here. It's going to take hard work, but it's going to happen by some mystical arrangement you can count on. So Ramaswar told this story. We used to print the Gitas at a place in Tennessee, I think Kingsport Press or something. Something like that. But they needed, in order to print enough Gitas for the Christmas marathon in America, US and Canada, they needed $250,000. This is mid 1970s, so you can do, it's a lot of money to get because the BBT, they work hard. They got to get the price, good quality price, good quality printing at the cheapest price so they can sell the books at the lowest price so they can distribute as many. I mean, they work hard at the BBT. How to put that book in your hand, it's the best quality at the lowest price so we can distribute as many as possible. It's hard work. I mean, they're Hare Krishna. So anyway, they needed $250,000 in order for Kingsport, and they got to start printing in September, maybe it's even August, I don't know, to get the books printed in time and shipped to all the temples. And they did not have the money. And Kurandar and Ramaswar were completely in anxiety, and they were shaking every tree, everybody who owed money, trying to collect it, and they were calling from Kingsport Press, hey, we got to have the money in 2 weeks. We got to have the money in the week. We got to have the money in 3 days, or you missed the print run. We can't deliver it. Ramaswar is at the Sunday feast. And there's a nice looking guy, nice Savile Row suit and a silk tie. And, so Ramaswar is talking to him. And the guy's first time to the temple, it's impressed, asking good questions, getting the Bhagavatam, the answer to all questions. When he finishes his plate, says, I'd like to give you something. So walks out, walks over to a brand new Mercedes, opens up the trunk, and hands him one of those James Bond briefcases, the metal ones you can shoot a bullet off, hands him one of the briefcases. So Ramaswar, he says, thank you very much. He's thinking, I'm a brahmachari. What the hell am I going to do with this thing? Anyway, he's nice. Thank you very much. So he goes back. It's a true story. Kurandar confirmed it. Goes back to his ashram, little brahmachari ashram, shared room with 6 men, opens it up. And just like the movies, it's full of stacked, bound $100 bills. Suitcase, just briefcase, full of 100. He goes to Kurandar. What do I do? Kurandar says, keep it. We'll go to the bank first thing. They were there before the bank opened. The guy opens the door. They put it through the counter machine. $250,000. Not quite done yet. Ramaswar, they sent it off to Kingsport, they transferred. That afternoon, 2 different Mercedes, brand new, show up. Big burly guys get out, and there's a different guy. He says, an associate of ours stopped by yesterday and gave you something. We want it back. You got skinny little Rama. I took it to the bank. And, we don't have it. What do you mean you don't have it? And he explained, oh, these are transcendental books and they're saving the world. And this is what the world is crying for. And even though you didn't intend it, all of whatever, because he could understand, they're drug dealers, from Colombia or whatever, that, whatever sinful deed you've got and whatever's you've now relieved yourself of it, So the guy sat back and thought about it and said, all right. And they got in their cars and drove off, and the Bhagavad Gitas were printed. So, I mean, this movement does not go in a straight line. It's got its own way of doing things. And we are so fortunate to have a chance to do good in the world, good for us and good for others. Okay, now we can end. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare